Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Immergence Show, where we explore the tech, creativity, and culture shaping the future of brand storytelling. Today's episode is one that every creative technologist, brand builder, and curious innovator needs to hear because we're tackling a question that's floating around so much lately. Why does so much AI content feel flat, forgettable, and kind of soulless? My guest today is here to help us fix that. Tyler Cohen is the creative director of Experience at Tool North America. And he's one of the few creatives using AI in the ways that are not just technically impressive, but funny, emotionally resonant, and genuinely unforgettable. He's made an entire AI film solo that went viral. He's brought comedy into brand activations. He's worked with major names like NBA, YouTube, and Adidas. And he is doing it all with small, nimble teams that move faster than big agencies can even brief. We also get at live Q&A happening throughout the episode, so feel free to put your questions in the chat, tag your friends, invite them to the live discussion, and we'll bring your questions as we go through the conversation. Tyler, welcome to the show. Let's get into it.
All right. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Very excited about this topic personally. There are so much content out there with this boom of generative AI. But your content stood out in the feed for me personally.
Thank you.
So I would love you to tell us like how you got started in this space and, like what led you to this specific work that you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah. How I got here was by chance. It's just always been about, for me, sort of following the bleeding edge, and doing the things that excite me. And so, I've been chasing trends for a while, right? I think there was a time before when NFTs, remember those, right? Where I was in that space and sort of on the forefront there doing some sort of stuff that got a little virality as well. And then when AI came along, saw this opportunity here. We use it all the time at my company at Tool. I'm creative director over there. And so, we're a group of creative technologists and creatives, and our whole responsibility is to sort of keep an eye out on what's happening and what's changing and how we can bring that to brands, right, to make them relevant in these spaces. And so for me, this film that I did that kind of blew up, this AI one about Jesus and the devil, it happened by mistake. We got access to this sort of beta to this tool, to Google VO2, and I was supposed to take a vacation, which is rare in the world of agencies. And one thing led to another. I ended up just sort of getting the hang of it and making this film. So that's kind of how I netted out here in terms of my personal sort of filmmaking process with AI, and professionally, it's just about being at Tool and working on the cutting edge.
Wow, that's amazing. And I want you to kind of briefly tell us what you did in the metaverse NFT world as well,
Sure.
Because I think that's interesting. And then we get into more specific of your generative AI work. Can you expand a little bit? I think you won awards and
Yeah. I alienated a lot of brands. Is basically the log line there. There was this, Nike sort of got into this space, right? In NFTs, CloneX. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but it's something that, most NFTs I wasn't really into. They all kind of had this similar looking artwork. It was this sort of Bored Ape style 2D flat thing. And, had done some stuff at my former company, Bleacher Report, did these basketballs for these rappers, made $1 million overnight. And I was hooked immediately. And I was like, okay, I'm pivoting. This is what I'm doing. And then sort of got into it and thought, okay, now that I had that sort of experience, brands were talking at that point in time, right, about going into the metaverse. That was everything, right? And so saw an opportunity there to do something with Nike and to do something with McDonald's and put them together and create this sort of crazy world where you sort of had this fast food QSR in the metaverse that was always on and serving sort of meals inspired by Nike and McDonald's, two brands that are polar opposites. But there was so much bad metaverse stuff. And it still is, right? Very few were doing things right. And so just wanted to create sort of a brand playbook. And one thing led to another. It got big. Nike stepped in and were like, no, you can't do this. But at that point, it took off and became a bit of a, it's embarrassing to say, but became a bit of a sort of like outlaw in that little space, right? It was a bit of a, David Goliath situation where, a lawsuit happened, this and that, whatever, around this whole thing. And got some visuals I can share later, but basically just sort of saying, hey, brands, this is how you could theoretically enter into the metaverse because the future is fandom. And when you do things that fans want, it resonates with them, and the proof's in the pudding. And long story short, won Best Metaverse Activation in 2022 from Ad Age. So that was a huge honor. It was a solo effort, right? It was just something I did in between my free time, which is, again, very little at my job. And that was that.
Oh my God. So you are truly passionate about this space and new technologies. Like, this is what you do for fun.
Yeah, no, I'm very lucky to have this job.
Amazing. Wow. Really impressive. I can't wait to see the visuals. But is there anything you want to start sharing with your deck, and then we get into the questions?
Sure. I mean, we can play this video in the background. I don't know if we want to do it with sound or without. It's 3 minutes, so you tell me what's okay. Best.
But sure. Before that, I want to say hi to our amazing community who are live with us here. Hi, Felipe, Fatima, Shadi, Jean, and everyone else who's tuning in live. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. And if you haven't commented, please say hi. We would love to see you. And we're very excited that you're here. I know a lot of you are already building great work in AI and even NFTs, Web3. And so I hope that you all enjoy this conversation. Awesome. For those of you who haven't seen this video, is what we're talking about. And so we're going to show a bit of it, but if you want to see the whole thing, I think it's on Tyler's LinkedIn, right?
Yep, that's correct. Also on YouTube. And I'll just, right before I play it, I'll just give you the log line. Basically, the premise here is, our landlord and savior, Jesus Christ, rents his spare room to the devil. And hilarity ensues. So we'll play a little bit of it, and then just let me know when we're good to stop.
Sure. This is hilarious. Oh my God. This is triggering my traumas.
Right.
Oh my God. All right, I think we can pause now. But that was really funny. And I remember when I saw it on the feed on LinkedIn, I immediately sent it to Casey and Felipe, who are also here. And I was like, this is amazing. And I didn't even know you did it all by yourself.
That's right.
In just a few days.
That's correct. So I've got some stats here, right? Just, and again, knowing AI and the underlying sort of data that's there, I think it's just to be totally transparent, right? I think it obviously is a result of all that work that sort of is in that machine to begin with, right? So while, yes, I was the one that created it, did all that, created the story, made the beats, et cetera, I'd be remiss if I didn't give credit, obviously, to the creatives, myself included, whose works exist somewhere in the ether there. But that said, these are the numbers that you just need to know from that video. 700 clip generations, 125 made it into the final cut. It was 5 working days. The average prompt was 250 words, and it was a team of 1, which I think is really, AI is a huge boon for the generalist, and I think we could talk about that a little more today. But something like this, had you done this the traditional route and method, right? Again, I'm not a filmmaker by trade, so I'm sure a true filmmaker would be able to do this and even do this better. But the fact that I was able to get in here and tell this story, create this story, and get these visuals consistently out like that really shows you where AI is, and rather was, because this was 4 months ago, right? So, and a day is a dog year in AI world. And so where we are today is already so much more advanced than what you just saw today. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. As Felipe said, our perspective towards AI has changed with the work of great creators like you, because we often think, oh, it's difficult or it's complicated. And so knowing that it's possible, that gives us hope to try.
That's right. And I think it's also, it's so misleading to see, like, on any feed, right? The stuff that's popular is never really good, right? It's like, a lot of it is so plasticky looking. You've all seen it, right? It's sci-fi, it's plasticky, tends to be problematic images of hypersexualized women, right? Like, it doesn't, it's all this stuff that gives everyone who doesn't see the potential ammunition, right? And so I think it's all about what you're going to see in the next few months and years and coming years is individuals being able to tell the stories they want to tell in meaningful ways and not being limited anymore by budget. Really, the only limitation, as cliche and cheesy as it sounds, is your creativity.
And I love to get into that topic. But yeah, I mean, to me personally, is like this generative AI has been empowering. That's the word that comes to me. Like, if you are good at whatever, now you are 10x, 100x with the power of these tools. So let's get into the discussion around the story. There are like so many types of mediums that you can use, but this story, I think, was the key in creating something magical like you did. Can you tell us a little bit more about the role of a story? What do you think about that? And like, what makes a good story?
I think, that's the thing. It's like, because there's this shiny new tool, right? AI, like, everybody just wants to play with it and generate from it because it's cheap and it's easy. But you have to remember, right? Like, attention spans are fleeting, right? Everyone is fighting for your eyeballs. And so in order to get those views, you have to tell a story that resonates. And I think a lot of the time we get lost in this idea that the tech is the thing, but the tech is not the thing. It's never the thing. It will never be the thing. The thing is the story. And if you don't have a good story, you don't have a reason to use the tech. So for me, that's what it's all about. It's like, if you get a laugh in the log line or the premise, there's a nugget there. There's something worth exploring. And so for me, story really is truly everything. And I think we can all attest to it. We all have fatigue, AI fatigue, timeline fatigue, where we just see stuff that really doesn't consider story. And that's not unique to AI, right? I mean, I hate to state the obvious, but story is the core and key to everything. Every brand we work with, everything that you do as a creative, story is at the core of all of that. So for me and for many creatives, it's the most important piece of the puzzle.
And what is your reference for a story? Because I feel like even the story means different things to different people.
Yeah. Well, I think I would define it as the thing that gives somebody a reason to watch it, right? Like, for them to spend their time, the few seconds of their time to give you their attention is everything. It's why, and I'm on record here, but I'll say it anyway. That's why I find advertising largely to be so problematic, is because this day and age, there isn't an effort to really capture my attention. Oftentimes it's a captive audience. So story here is layered, right? In this particular example, it wasn't just about telling this funny story about Jesus and the devil. There's actually this parallel about AI and the creative letting AI into their house. And that's what this idea is. And so in this example, AI is the devil because we've all seen the pitchforks in every single comment section ever about anything posted about AI. And the house is the creative house, right? It's the creative letting AI in. And at the beginning, they resist AI, but then towards the end, they learn to embrace it. And you can see at the end, live a much happier life. I mean, it's one perspective and one point of view on it, but that's what it is. It's about telling something that's layered. So for me, that's what story is.
And I love that kind of surprise factor. Like we would think in that short film that is gonna like kick him out. Jesus is gonna kick him out, but no, they got to make it work. And yeah, so having these different elements of surprise factor, engaging different emotions, that makes this story more memorable.
Right.
What a good point. And we have a question along those lines from Felipe, says, what's the storytelling mistake you see brands make when using AI tools?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's multi-layered. I think the big one is that they're letting the tool choice drive the story rather than the story drive the tool choice. Oftentimes in these rooms, so it's like, how can we use AI? How can we use AI? And that's not the way to do it, right? The way to do it is what story we want to tell, and then what tech do we use for that? So I think that's probably the biggest one. And then the second one is always, there's too many people. There's always too many people. And so for me, there's this expression that a camel is a horse designed by a committee. So this idea that like, if you get a bunch of people together, oftentimes, you create more problems than you solve. And that's not to say that you shouldn't be collaborative. You absolutely should. But in my world, where we're a production company, we have agencies that we work for, and those agencies work for clients. So you just have layers and layers of opinions, and everyone feels like they have to have an opinion. So I think those are the two big watch outs there, is opinions and then putting the tech before the story.
That is so true. A lot of times, like, again, we talked about like metaverse NFTs, like everybody would just wanted to do something.
Yeah, exactly.
For what? What was even the relevance?
Right.
A lot of times there was no relevance to the brand. But yeah, such a good advice. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for the question, Felipe. So I think what differentiated your story from other stories was also this fun humor factor. What made you choose that emotion? And considering, like you said, there are a lot of sci-fi, hyper polished type of content. Why did you choose that type of emotion?
Sure. And I think, subconscious, but I think the answer is because in order to be humorous, you have to have a soul, right? And I think there's something about that. It's like, it's easy to churn out something that looks impressive, but actually isn't. And so I think for me, it was about, and I don't know if it was even conscious, and maybe it's after the fact, but like just wanting to stand out and do something different. Because when everybody's going this way, right? What do you can follow, you can go the other way. And of course, I'm not the only one. And there are way funnier things that are out there, obviously. But in the sphere of LinkedIn that's so buttoned up and serious and whatever, to do something humorous is to catch attention. And so, I don't know if I would have had the same success if I did this on Twitter or YouTube or wherever else. But I think for me, that was a lot of the driving force and factor.
And I think another element I noticed in your other videos is like you always pick something that resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, very important for considering like virality or storytelling. And like Felipe said earlier, like there was no words. We were just
that's right
feeling this story, and we all resonate with that. We had some sort of neighbor in our lifetime. So, but yeah, I mean, what is your perspective about choosing this type of topics?
So that actually, and I don't know if anyone saw it, and I have it later if we want to share it, but this was a technical limitation. So at the time, you didn't have the ability because it's all text prompting. So everything you just saw in that video was me sitting there typing out a prompt and then sending it back without any sort of visual reference. And if anybody here has dabbled in AI at all, you know that getting consistency from frame to frame like that is just insane. It's just not the way to do it. But unfortunately, now the tools have changed, right? So, but the reason I chose in that first one, Santo, or in the second one, Jesus, is not because I've got some sort of problem with Christianity. I hope that doesn't come across that way. But the reason I chose them was because I chose characters that were non-IP related, right? Because I didn't want to infringe again after my metaverse experience on IP. So I wanted to choose characters that typically, for better or worse, show up consistently the way they show up in media, particularly Western media. And so that allowed me a little cheat to sort of say, okay, yes, I still have to describe the characters, but the outputs of this generation, Jesus is always going to be Jesus, right? Santa is always going to be Santa. So it was just a hack to try to make this thing work for me within the limitations that it had set at that point in time.
Wow. So you use that limitation to your advantage.
Correct.
And I highly encourage people to watch that Santa video as well. That was also really fascinating. But yeah, lots of great work. Cool. Let's get into the discussion around, how you did this all by yourself. Like, if you can walk us through. I mean,
Sure.
you kind of touched on how it was just prompts. If you can expand a little bit, I think.
I've got this perfect segue, because I've got this presentation here, and I'll try to go through this as quickly as possible, just being cognizant of time, and I'll skip what isn't relevant. But just to give everybody sort of an understanding of how this works, this is a 5-day structure here, right? So this was done in 5 days, right? And so you can see here how this works, right? So day 1 to day 3 was ChatGPT, and we'll talk about the role of an LLM sort of in storytelling here. And then also VO2, which is my tool of choice. I just happen to think it's the best tool that's in the market. And the day 1 through 3 was all about defining the parameters of the story, generating the clips. Days 3.5 to 5, then we're bringing them into Premiere. And now typically, right, like, it's a linear process, filmmaking. But with AI, it's a totally different mindset. I just need to hit key beats that I know that I want to tell. And then I can go back until my heart's content and get coverage and little anecdotes and little funny clips and splice them in wherever I want to, so long as I'm hitting the sort of story beats that I want to tell. And I've said this before, but it's kind of like, that's the way Curb Your Enthusiasm, that show, works, right? Where there's actually not a script. They just sort of say, hey, we want to do this for the show. This is the storyline. And everybody improvise your lines to get us to that storyline. So it's like jazz almost. It's the way in which you have to sort of work with AI. The traditional route is not the way to work. And then I think the most important piece here is the LLM. And so, I put this visual here because I think it's super important to understand. It's like, this thing is put here so that you can focus where you need to focus, and it can fill in all the rest. So I knew that I wanted to tell this story. I had this funny idea about Jesus and the devil once I identified, right, the IP, the non-infringing IP that I wanted to use that was always going to be consistent. And then I said, okay, I know I want this to be a roommate story. That kind of all makes sense. Jesus, devil, polar opposites. But then go to ChatGPT and say, look, these are some of my experiences with roommates, of neighbors, like you've said, we've all had. But now put them in a biblical lens and give me sort of the equivalent, right? And so then it could spit out a bunch of these ideas. And then the human becomes sort of the editor. And they say, no, yes, this works. No, I don't like that. Let's explore this a little bit more. It just becomes this sounding board for you. And so for me, it's this 4-step process, right? It's brainstorm, it's develop, optimize, and then consistency. The big hack here that anybody walks away with is that you basically inject your prompts one time. At the beginning, you sort of say, okay, every time I'm going to mention the devil as a keyword, I want him to look like this. Shiny red horns, leathery skin, goatee, et cetera, et cetera. So this way, I'm not typing in that prompt every single time. I generated 700 clips. Think about how much wasted time would be if I had to type every single time I wanted the devil to appear. I have to type it in like that. So I was able to get ChatGPT to sort of just retain that information and then kick that back to me when I needed it to kick back to me. So just a huge, tremendous time saver, as well as, funny to say, but creative partner in many ways.
I love that. That's kind of like setting the parameters in coding.
That's right. That's
that you,
exactly right.
you just don't have to rewrite it over and over again.
Yeah, it would be a tremendous waste of time, right? Like I know that I can consistently call it back when I need to call it back, and then if I want to make adjustments on the fly, I can.
But
And then
was it, sorry,
no, please.
was it kind of like giving you the same character? Because often AI hallucinates and like, does things that it was not aligned with the previous one.
I will say to Google, and to Deep Dream, the team that is putting together VO2, I think they've done it. This tool is a fantastic job. They've done an incredible job here. I was shocked by some of the consistency. I'd love to say that like I was the driving force and factor in there, but I think that'd be doing them a huge disservice. I don't know what's going on underneath the hood there, but it's Google, and in many ways had counted them out at the beginning of this AI race.
Yeah.
But then had dropped Google VO2 and had really, for me, changed everything. So I think part of that was partially choosing universally recognized characters. But then I think the other half of that was having an incredible tool sort of as the foundation that just did a great job of keeping things consistent.
Yeah, I mean, Google has been really impressive. I've been using Gemini Advanced a lot. Yep. It's so much better than ChatGPT.
It is.
And now they're even going to, supercomputers and other fields as well. Like Google is now coming out with all the things they've been working for many years.
So. Oh yeah, I can't wait to see where they're going to take VO2 as well. Like just the next iteration is going to be just wild. But I just want to also surface this very quickly, and then we can move on if you want to. But I wanted to put a sample prompt here for everybody to see. And again, this isn't gospel, pardon the pun, but like the idea here is that it's 200 words or so, right? And you can see the prompt adherence here was off the charts. I actually put the most difficult shot in the film here on the left side of the slide. It's Medusa smoking a cigarette, but I also wanted every single snake on her head smoking a cigarette too, while she was being hit on by this like little imp at this party, right? And so I generated this clip, I don't know, 100 times. And it was like, it would get the cigarette in one, and then it would get the snake in the other, and then it would sometimes have some snakes, but not all. And so, as you're pulling the lever on this slot machine, when it finally hits, you get that feeling of euphoria. But I was able to get this shot, and this is the prompt for just this one. This is in the film for like a second. You might not even catch it, but this sort of 200-word prompt is what's driving that. And that's just an easy structure here. This isn't set in stone. No one has verified this at Google that this is how this works. But for me, I also told ChatGPT to set up all of my shots like this. Camera, most prominent details first, main character. Then we go to supporting character, and then we go to background and everything else. And it just seemed to work. So that's sort of how we arrived at that shot.
Oh, I love that. And now that you're explaining, it's like any other art we see in a gallery. Like we're seeing more details than we originally noticed. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm actually curious, when you talk about these angles and this kind of like terminology, similar to when Midjourney came out, we saw a lot of great work came from actual artists or like photographers that have been familiar with these terminologies. Are you using these words and language in your day-to-day job? Is that no?
No, actually, I'm not. And like not to like not to make it seem so simple, but I'm not. I'm not like I said, I'm not a filmmaker by trade, right? And so, a lot of this is just natural language, right? I mean, natural language processing, right, is what this is all about. And so basically, it opens the door to allow you to speak plainly. Which theoretically, right, levels the playing field for those that don't necessarily have the knowledge. And I think this is a good example of that. If you put a lens in front of me, I wouldn't know what to do with it. So I think, this is a great example of that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So this was the most challenging scene. And why did you use ChatGPT? Was there anything specific about ChatGPT that helped you?
It's funny because I talked to Google as well, and that was the first question. They were like, "Why didn't you use Gemini?" And so, and the honest answer was, I just didn't. I just was using ChatGPT already, and so it wasn't even really a conscious choice. It was just the LLM that I knew, and But if I did it again the next time, we're using Gemini as well internally, a tool, and I completely agree with your assessment. I would absolutely use Gemini next time.
And I think when you were working on this, Gemini was not as good.
You said it, not me.
So we are seeing the new updates much better. But I don't know, I was just curious, like, is there a specific thing or is there a specific model within ChatGPT that you think is better for scripting this type of content?
I mean, every day I use, a 4.0 is the one that I'm using every day. But it doesn't mean, again, like it's the same with lenses, right? It's the same with any of that. It's like, it's just the one that I'm comfortable with and using. And I know my counterparts who are a lot more technically savvy than I am at my company, the creative techs, they could get deep in that and explain to you the nuances and differences. I'm just the smooth brain creative director.
No, you're doing amazing. And did you train a GPT? Like JK is saying, like training GPT for optimal output really ups consistency and elements. Is that what you did, or you just kind of continued in one thread?
No, I continue exactly like we do. Like at work, we do LoRa trainings and we train. We do all that kind of system prompts and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there we do that. For this, no, this was simply done in a single thread and just was self-referential and just said, hey, update this based on that, and then give me the latest, and we just go back. And there wasn't even, I don't think there even was the Canvas feature at the time where you could edit the same document. So it was just this painful chain of just, thousands and thousands and thousands of words.
And when it hallucinates.
Exactly. But honestly, and I think that's part of it too. It's like, sometimes it's the discovery. It's like you pick up the rock as a kid and you see what's underneath it, all those disgusting things that are underneath it. It's like the discovery, the accidental discovery of the hallucinations, right? Like, so I think a lot of times, it's that creative spark or idea. It's the same way. It's like saying something totally bizarre in a brainstorm meeting, but that idea can be the thing that takes you down a totally different path. So the day they fix that is the day that we abandon ChatGPT entirely.
That's a good point. That's a type of creativity. We often say like, oh, LLMs are not creative, but that's just a different version of creativity.
Yeah.
Very good point. And Felipe is saying there are many creative people out there that were limited by technology, equipment, or funds. This changes everything. So I'm actually curious, do you see like the future being like a world where creators like yourself like have their own one-person studio doing great work like this?
Yes, without a doubt. If I was bloat is dead. If I was an agency, I would be very nervous. The future belongs to the creative generalist, somebody that's just good enough in every realm to make something, just has enough knowledge to be dangerous. And I think it's only going to get easier. And so, it's really going to come down to what we started, to bring it full circle, but it's going to come down to the quality of the story, right? That's driving that tech, because when the tech becomes super accessible, what's the differentiator? Differentiator is the story that you're telling. So 1000%. And honestly, I welcome the end of these bloated agencies. Again, not casting, dismay or doubt on any particular one, but I just think it's become so streamlined, being able to sort of take an idea in your head and put it into the world exactly as you envisioned it, that I don't know how much longer the justification can exist, just being a total cynic and realist, for the larger agencies to turn around and charge these brands what they want to charge these brands. So it's brave new world, and I'm very excited to be a part of it.
And I think to that point, another thing that there will be missing out is the fact that everything in culture is changing so fast.
That's right.
It's not going to be relevant. Like one TikTok goes viral and then every agency wants to go work with that influencer, and then it's not exciting anymore.
That's
by
exactly
the time
right.
they come out. So the speed is another superpower of teams of one.
That's right. That's 1,000% correct. It's the reactive speed to things that matter, to cultural moments that matter online, right? To this shared sort of space we all exist in. And you lose all that time if you go, okay, well, that was cool. Now let's bring it to all the stakeholders. Everybody sign off, this, and that. And so by the time you get that back out the door, that trend has died, right? These things happen so fast. So if you're an individual and you can visualize anything almost instantaneously, it's just about either your story or the audience that you're communicating to make a spark and resonate quickly. Because you're right, speed is the name of the game.
Love it, love it. And Felipe is adding, like, now in software development as well. I mean, in every industry, we are seeing generalists are becoming the powerful ones, because you don't really need to be experts in super details. That's why these tools are for.
That's right.
Such a good point. So what are you showing us here? Tell us more.
This is another silly shot, but like, I think this is something that we all have to be cognizant of, and it's a thing that I've started to see really bubble up, and I think we're going to run into. This shot was very hard to get because of all the flags for, I tried to have this image of Jesus carrying this big bag of dog poop, right? Like, to drive home this idea that this is a monster dog. It's just a funny visual, right? But
love it.
No matter what I prompted, Google was like, sorry, can't do that. No, we're not going to allow you to do that.
Yeah.
And so as these AIs, get smarter and, can fight with me about what that actually means, intelligence, yada, yada. But as they get smarter, the systems get smarter, and then they start to figure out, okay, well, like, what can we censor? And the worst thing that can happen, right, is that we can have all these incredible advancements now in the Wild West. It's like it's like the internet before what it has become now, right? Where you were able to do what you wanted to do before these sort of big brands and companies were able to take you offline and deplatform you, right? Not for anything crazy or radical like that. Obviously, we have to exist within a society, yada, yada, yada. But in terms of a creative vision. And so we're in this sweet spot right now where they haven't really caught up. But the reason I'm showing this particular shot is because it was a way for the human in the machine to circumvent the system. And so this shot here was, okay, I need a green plastic bag filled with hot steaming fudge. And that was the thing that was able to bypass Google in that particular instance. Now, in the future, that LLM will self-reinforce. It'll self-check. It'll be smart enough to know, oh, he's trying to do this. I'm going to block that too. But that's the reason I wanted to share this shot.
That's such a good point. Yeah, you have to go around it sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they're also limiting creativity with those guidelines. So, like,
that's right.
We have to be mindful. Like, hopefully these restrictions will improve as well.
And that's, and I think that's part of why open source needs to always be in the conversation, right? And I think it's becoming easier than ever as well to sort of have those solutions. We're seeing open source solutions pop up all the time. Now, they're not at the fidelity yet that obviously a Google is, because Google's got billions of dollars or trillions, whatever it is, right? And they can do that until the cows come home. But it's so important to have those open source solutions because you want to be able to tell the story you want to be able to tell.
That's such a good point. And things become normalized over time. So it has to start from some creative areas. All right, cool. What else do you have about this film or your process?
I just think and we'll move past this particular film in a minute, but just want to show this lastly. And this is basically just showing consistency, right? Like, it's not perfect. Like, you look at here, this is every instance of the devil showing up in this spot. And I wanted to highlight that. And again, this is driven by text prompt. Now you can do image to video and it's okay. But, I still believe that text prompting just generates better results. And that may not be based on anything. It could be totally anecdotal. But I just found that the physics and things related to that are often better when it's text-based than when I start with an image. Although starting with an image gives me more control. I'm sure I'll eat my words in a few weeks when the next advancement comes out. But wanted to show you this just to sort of say, like, it's not perfect, but these are sort of how the machine was understanding consistency here in terms of how the devil came to life.
But it's also kind of natural. Like, we want to feel kind of connected to this character. And like a human, you look different every day. You shave or whatever.
Great point. That's a great point. And so I think it's existing. Yeah, that's right. We have to exist within that threshold of acceptability, right? You don't want it to be jarring enough where somebody looks at it and goes, what's going on here? But you want enough consistency and enough differentiation where it feels like this is actually filmed.
Yeah. Kind of like, I also loved your Santa movie was similar. We saw the evolution of Santa's face and everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Very cool. Amazing. What else about this?
And then lastly, I think I'll just say on this particular film is that just, it's not just video, it's not just image, it's also sound, right? Like sound makes all of these. I watched this because I was building it. I watched it without sound. It was terrible without sound. It needs sound. And so, the old way was to Foley or to sort of go to a sound library. But in this particular instance, right, like this visual here, it says no results for two monsters arm wrestling, grunting in the middle of a zombie party while Jesus makes it rain, right? Like that doesn't exist anywhere. I can't pull that.
Oh my God.
So I used 11 Labs in this particular instance. We use 11 Labs all the time at Tool to do voice fonts, right, to recreate people's voices with their permission. And so in this particular instance, they have this tool where you can actually create sound effects. And so was able to get a great sound effect out of this from 11 Labs that would have taken me, again, much more time to try to Foley that and make that correct. So
amazing. Wow. Yeah. That's wonderful. And Phil is saying, I showed this at a live. It was so cool. And sound design is very important. Totally.
Completely agree, Phil. Completely agree.
And it's not also about just words. You still need that's another engaging another sense. So the sound was as important as, like the spoken words.
But that's right. And I think that was again, a restriction of the time, right? The lip sync tech has gotten better. It's not incredible yet, but like it's gotten better, but wanted to be able to tell a universal story, right? Bad roommates are universal. Jesus, the devil, universal. So if you can tell the story again, without the need for dialogue, then you don't need dialogue. Right. So it was that simple. So being able to make something that resonates with people without the dialogue, but now the tech kind of allows it. So let's see what the next iteration brings.
Yeah, to that point, I was hearing Mr. V's interview, and he was saying the content that he posts without English words actually perform a lot better because majority of the people in the world don't even know English.
Yeah, I think that's great. Global audience. Exactly. And I think it's now, if I'm an individual that's able to create this without a studio, and I'm able to reach far more people. Think about how wide that audience could be. I know we're always niching down now, right? The age of like pop stars is over. Like there will never be another Michael Jackson because as talented as Michael Jackson was, sort of the restrictions or the funnels for finding media at that point in time was different than it is now, but the playing field is leveled. So there's way more musicians that are able to enter the market. It's the same thing here, right? Because we're going to democratize this, the field is going to get way more leveled, but concurrently, the trash heap is going to exponentially grow. So how do you stand out in this landfill of generated content? And again, to bring it full circle, right? Of course, you have to have an audience, but it comes back to story.
Yep, love it. Thank you. Awesome. And we do have questions, but I want you to kind of go through your deck as much as we can over the next 5-10 minutes. And we kind of have to go towards the wrap up. But yeah, okay. Show us what you have next.
So the next one's the Santa one, but we don't have to, you can find that on LinkedIn. You can find that wherever. It's a funny video, basically.
Yeah, definitely recommend watching that.
Yeah, it's basically the weight of Santa buckles under the weight of the pressure of Christmas and starts to act naughty, and then ultimately finds himself. So it's actually a happy story.
Yeah.
And then we'll just very quickly just wanted to share actually professionally some of the stuff that I'm doing. And so this has been shared publicly before, so I want to share this here. But basically, at Tool, we're creating this really cool sort of pipeline that allows you to recreate products in latent space with pixel perfect accuracy. Right. So what is it doing? It's basically saying, hey, I want to do a product photography shoot, but I want my product to look exactly like it needs to look every time. Think about the cost savings on that. Think about the increasing creativity on that. There's no longer limitations in terms of what we can photograph and how our product shows up. So just very quickly, I'll make this super fast, but very quickly, it's in 4 steps, right? You train on a product, right? Everything starts with 3D. For us. So you train on a 3D object. Right now we're moving to zero shot where you can train on a picture, but it's never going to be as good. Maybe I'll eat my words. It'll never be as good as training on 3D. Then you basically in the system, you caption that. And then you understand, you train on the brand photography. What makes a brand a brand? A lot of times brands will think they know what makes a brand, but they'll actually be surprised by the results, right? Like Chobani, for example, is photographed in a very specific way. Nike always comes to life in another very specific way. So just wanted to show this super quickly, but basically this is the 3-step process, right? It's like train on a model. That middle one is the recreation of the model in latent space, right? That's generated. And then the third one is it in context. And I think the most powerful visual I can show you here is this one. Loaf of bread on the left as it exists, right? Then we take Chobani's very unique style, which is in the middle there, and then we run that loaf of bread through Chobani's style. And so that on the right, that's a loaf of bread Chobani style. So you can start to see how brands can kind of own their worlds. And the truth is always going to come out as a result of their underlying data sets, whether the marketer agrees with it or not. But that's what Chobani looks like, because that's what we've trained on for Chobani. And so to put a nice little ribbon on it, this is the final piece here. The image on the left was the original photograph. We would typically not try to recreate one, because what's the point if you already have it? But it was just an exercise here to sort of show Chobani, hey, look, we can actually recreate this in latent space because of all the training data we have and what we've created here. So there are obviously variances here. Didn't do the blue spoon because they didn't want an image for image situation. But you can see here, the one on the right is a product with pixel perfect accuracy that was generated in latent space in a photographic style and setting that is exactly as Chobani would have shot it. So lots of crazy stuff happening both at Tool on the creative side and on the technical side, but just want to show you where AI can interact in all of those spectrums there. That's all.
Love it. And if you can tell us like what type of projects you guys generally do.
Yeah, so at Tool, we are, on my side of the house at Tool, we do experience. So digital activations, live experiences, everything from festivals to branded content activations. Anytime they need something that has cool tech or anything interesting, they come to us. And I think a lot of times, same with AI here, is our whole task is figuring out, we always want to do something cool. We always want to use the tech. But we have to stop ourselves and say, no, like, what is the story we're trying to tell? And then what is the appropriate tech to tell that story with? So again, to hit the nail on the head, right? To beat the dead horse, it's always about story and how we sort of make these things come together.
Yes, love it. And I would love to know, because I remember in our previous conversation before the show, you told me the team at Tool is also very small. And so if you can tell us, like, as the creative director, how you put together your team and,
Sure.
What is the secret sauce or any tip that you can give us in terms of like how you can achieve great work with the small teams, even before these tools?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost is, right, you've got to be surrounded by people smarter than yourself. And every single person I work with is smarter than me, so thank God. The second piece is that, you got to look for generalists. And that may alienate some people, because I know a lot of folks have been specialists and have gone deep into their discipline. They're always going to be needed. But I think as we move towards a path where we have quicker turnarounds and budgets that are smaller than they used to be, because everything has been leveled and more people are able to create and compete. If you can find a nimble team of generalists, you're going to be in a very good position because you're going to be able to do what you need to do without the bloat of traditional agencies.
Love it. That's such a good point. And if you can, give us any advice in terms of like, for those who want to start using AI, we had a question like, what would be the first tool that people should start trying, like from a creative perspective? Where do you think they should start?
Sure. I think for me, if I were to do it today, knowing what I know now, I think Crea, honestly, is probably the tool to use, only because it's such an accessible user interface, and there is so much to learn within there. It's so varied. You can do everything from a training to video to upscaling to image generation and everything in between. So if you're just starting out and you want an accessible interface that kind of does everything, Crea would be my recommendation on where to start.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And what's one practice or mindset shift that you recommend folks to adopt if they want to be successful in creative work?
Relinquish control. Because if you try to control AI, you're going to drive yourself mad. And embrace the surprise, and have those key beats that you want to tell. But it's not the way of working in the past. It's not how we did it before, right? So just be okay with change. Because if you're not okay with change, I got bad news for you for the remainder of the media landscape and life that you're going to live. in the future with AI.
Awesome. Another question from Shadi. Where do you draw inspiration from outside the AI or tech space?
We're always, I think A is lived experience, right? I think if you're a human, I think it's just part of sort of this soup that's life, right? Is just pulling in things that you experience on a day-to-day basis. But then there's also a very concentrated effort at Tool where we're aggressively watching timelines, trends, things that are changing and happening. And it's exhausting because the speed of acceleration of creativity and AI tools that are coming out now, it's unlike anything I've ever seen, for better or worse. And so if you've missed a week, you've missed a year. And so hopefully that changes at some point because I'm getting very tired. But that's really what it has to be. You have to just sort of keep your eyes open.
And I remember, like, we thought crypto moves fast.
Exactly.
This is just another level. I don't know what's next, but whatever is just like a lot. And what do you think in terms of AI generated like influencers or virtual characters? What are your thoughts on that side?
And I don't want to alienate anybody. I don't know where you stand on it, but I'm going to be totally frank and honest with you. I think that whole thing is bullshit. I see no world in which that is a good use of AI, because if we look at influencers, for example, right, or content creators, or just creatives, people that put stuff out into the world, you have to have some sort of connection to them. There's got to be some sort of reason that you're looking at their stuff. I can't tell you how many times I go on LinkedIn and see, comment content. If you want my sort of AI UGC fake creator thing, and it's bullshit. I'm sorry, like it's never going to be a thing. And I'm happy to eat my words, but I would not focus your effort or my effort on any of that ever, because again, the human is in the loop and the story is at the core, and the UGC AI creator is never going to be able to tell the story the way the human is going to be able to tell the story.
And I think the mistake people make is that they think these UGCs are really looking like a real human, but you're starting to notice it. And there are tools that are proving that these are not, like, you'll know it. So then it's not going to work as well. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for the response. Phil is asking, what are you using for lip sync now?
So it depends on what your needs are, but Dreamina is one that I've seen in the last few weeks, and that I think it's from ByteDance. I don't know. I think it's from ByteDance. By far the best results. It becomes a problem if you don't have if you need an API, it doesn't have API access. So internally, we're using a tool called SyncSo because it's got API access. But if that wasn't a prerequisite, I would be looking at Dreamina if I were you. It's just giving the greatest results.
Thank you for sharing. And are there any specific industries or brand categories that you think they're underusing AI?
No, because I think there are many that are overusing AI. I cannot tell you how many creative briefs we get for brands that have no business using AI that want to use them. I can't unfortunately call them out, but no, I don't think that's the case. I think every agency in the world that represents any brand has been having this conversation about AI for the last year and a half.
Nice. And Chris says, respectfully disagree. I agree. I don't know which comment you disagree, Chris, but you can let us know. All right, so let's talk about the last part, kind of the future. And with everything that is going on, and the fact that you're on top of all these technologies, like, what are you most excited about?
In terms of AI or just anything?
Anything.
Oh, man. I think honestly, I think it's a two-parter. I think the first part is the sort of ability now for anybody to do anything. That's huge. That is huge ramifications. Now, whether or not people are going to do it, that doesn't change. Just because I can generate something doesn't mean I'm actually going to go do it. But I think that represents a huge business opportunity, creative opportunity for people as individuals that no longer require to get into a particular club or group of people or agency or this or that. So for me, that's huge. I think the next piece is sort of seeing what's going to happen as a result or a reaction to sort of the slew of AI content once AI content becomes very good. So I want to see what that inflection point's going to look like when people react to that, or when there's a sort of resurgence of hand-done, handmade stuff, and sort of how these symbiotic relationship between the machine and the man or woman is going to work in the future. So I think there's a lot of things there, and I think we all just have to be cognizant of these giant corporations, right? And what can we do in the open source sort of community to battle against that as we sort of move to a future where robots hopefully don't take over. So all of that stuff.
Amazing. And Phil is asking, do you feel like your workflow changes every week?
Phil, I made the mistake of being too efficient with AI. So I think that's my last piece of advice to any creative here is don't show all your cards, because if they know you can do it in 5 days, they're going to want you to do it in 5 days.
Oh, yes. That's such a good point. We're human. We can't really work at the speed of AI. Right. I'm curious, how do you see the industry shifting? Anything else you would like to add in terms of like?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think every creative who's working with any type of client has a huge responsibility to talk about, and I know you're just showing you all of this, to talk about ethics first and foremost, right? And whatever that means in the context of AI. But I don't want to say more importantly, but more importantly for your sanity, to sort of give clients an understanding at the onset of what it means to work with AI and how it's a totally different process than the traditional linear process. Because if they like two things you've generated and they like one thing about one of them and another thing about the other, you can't just go back in easily yet and combine those things together. So the client needs to think in a different mindset. So I think you've got a responsibility in the future, or right now rather, to educate your client on what it's like to work with AI.
Love it. Thank you for sharing. And what's your dream project if budget and time weren't an issue?
All right. So they give me a bit of a hard time about this one at work, and it's going to sound a bit loopy, but like I've always wanted to be able to shape clouds. I know how weird that sounds, but like I think about like just doing something crazy in nature at a scale that isn't precedented, or like that's unprecedented, or just hasn't been done before. Yeah. And there's something just about clouds in particular that I'd love to be able to get to, like a S. Devlin level, or like some of these people that create large scale installations. So to do something in shape nature like that in an interesting way, I think would be awesome. It's on my bucket list. I've never been able to do it. Physically. Yeah, wow. Exactly.
That's very important. Oh, so because virtually you should be able to, right?
No, totally. But no, I mean physically impacting the world in a non-destructing way, but to do it at a scale that creates awe. And for me, it's always been about clouds for some strange reason. So push comes to shove. If I get $1 billion to do something crazy, that's what I'm going to do.
Love it. I want to be there and definitely talk about it on our show when you have it. That sounds really cool. So is there anything else you would like to share in terms of what's next for you or for Tool? Anything you can tease?
We're working every day. We've got some crazy new thing that's come across our desk. So, you'll see stuff we put out, brands we're working with now. I can say this because we just put one out on Instagram, but we did something with Kyrie Irving, basketball player, right? So where we used AI for the whole process there. So just, getting into the cultural lexicon in a meaningful way with AI as we continue to, and other tools, as we continue to shape the future of this company and become leaner and meaner in the future.
Love it. Thank you so much, Tyler. This was a wonderful episode with lots of learnings and great insights. And thanks to our amazing community for, being so engaged and being present with us. Thank you, JK, Chris, Ian, Phil, Felipe, Shadi, Shaina, and everyone else, Jean, that tuned in, Alexander. We're so grateful for your presence, for your engagement. Hope you learned something. And please reach out to Tyler, follow him on LinkedIn, and watch those videos that he's created. They're so wonderful. And next week, we will be back again, Tuesday at 12 p.m. EST. We have another amazing artist coming, and Ian is actually going to be co-hosting with me to interview this great friend, Carl Clintus, who is going to talk about animation, AI work, all the great work stuff. But thank you so much again, Tyler. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
wonderful rest of your day.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.